This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, Special Prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome. This is Larry Klayman. We're bringing to you our first show, Special Prosecutor, with yours truly, Larry Klayman. I'm the founder of both Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch. I'm currently the chairman and general counsel of Freedom Watch. I'm a trial lawyer. I'm an investigator. I'm someone that digs up corruption in government and brings it to a conclusion. I'm seeking remedies. So each week, you're going to hear things that nobody's heard before, either on television or on radio. This is new information that will help our country be made great again, in the words of President Trump, and in my own words, to bring the country back to the vision of our founding fathers. So I hope that you'll tune in. Go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, and you can see the cases and investigations that we've been working on. First up is Dennis Montgomery, client, NSA CIA whistleblower, someone who has more information about the illegal surveillance on the American people by our government than even Edward Snowden. He confirmed that President Trump was being wiretapped. He confirmed that the Chief Justice of the United States, other justices, 156 other judges, even yours truly, was subject to illegal surveillance, and you were too. So it's very important that you hear what he has to say, because we're fighting in the courts to return our country to the vision of the founding fathers. Now, Dennis, you have to be careful about what you say, because this stuff is in front of the FBI right now. They haven't been doing anything for 2 years, and we're pressing on them to do it. I don't want you to get into anything that's classified. I've never seen it. But I want you to explain to the American people exactly why what you provided is so important, and why it needs to be investigated, and why we cannot depend on either the intelligence agencies or the intelligence committees in Congress to do the job. Why, in fact, if this egg is going to be cracked and fried, and it needs to be fried, frankly, it's going to be people like you that do it. Dennis, tell your story quickly.
Well, I was a CIA contractor both under John Brennan and later under James Clapper. And these individuals were running domestic surveillance programs in the United States, collecting information on Americans. Now, this isn't political. They were collecting information on Republicans and Democrats. But they collected everything they could find: bank accounts, phone numbers, chats, emails. And they collected it, a massive amount of it, under the Obama administration. Now, I came forward years ago to bring this information to the people, that these surveillance programs were not just being run on foreign surveillance, they were being run on domestic surveillance. When James Clapper says there was no surveillance in 2013 when he came before Congress, that is the tipping point by which Snowden said, "I've had enough," and took up the information and left. I've been doing this whistleblowing because I think it's important to all Americans to understand how much of this data was collected and how it's being used as leverage against people.
Now, Dennis, the intelligence agencies have tried to destroy you, have they not?
Yes, in 2000, they leaked false information about me in 2009 and 2011 to the press to discredit me in case their domestic surveillance programs ever came public.
And they used a reporter of the New York Times by the name of James Risen, who wrote a book, Pay Any Price, to also destroy your reputation. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. James Risen was after the Bush administration and wanted anything on the Bush administration he could find to hurt George Bush and his administration. Well, somebody leaked my name to him, saying about my work for the government didn't work and so forth, which is ridiculous. My work save lives. Millions of people were probably saved because of the work I was doing.
Well, you can see how they're trying to destroy the Trump administration right now, so it's no secret that they tried to destroy a whistleblower like you. And James Risen wrote this book, Pay Any Price. We've sued him in court. It's now on appeal to the district court in the circuit court in Washington, D.C. Risen came up with information that a software that you developed supposedly was the biggest hoax in American history, in effect. Obviously, that's incorrect. This is exactly what's happening in Washington today. Anybody that comes forward with truth or challenges the powers to be, these very powerful intelligence agencies get destroyed.
James Risen was leaked false information, and he was so much in a hurry to report it that he reported it not understanding that his sources were unreliable. His sources were giving him false information. They were giving him fake news. And he didn't even bother checking whether the news was accurate or not. He just wanted to hurt the Bush administration, so he spun this tale. And he knew I could not respond to his articles because I was under a U.S. protective or gag order on me saying I couldn't respond to anything. And I had the state secrets privilege filed against me that if I would have violated, I would have been charged with treason under the U.S. Espionage Act. So anybody could say anything, and I had no ability to respond to it because the government had a gag order on me.
And Dennis, you know that I brought you forward to the Federal Bureau of Investigation at the highest levels, just under Director James Comey. We were working through his general counsel, James Baker, two special agents, Walter Giardina and William Barnett, who interviewed you for 2 to 3 hours. Is that correct?
Yeah, they not only interviewed me, I was given, as you well know, no questions in advance. I answered all of their questions. I never took the fifth at any time. I never left the room and said, let me talk to my attorney about the questions. You were there. I answered every single question that they asked me without hesitation. I have put my family for years at great risk by coming forward. It's been very difficult on me and my family. Obviously, I went through a health crisis a number of years ago. I felt so...
Well, you have a brain aneurysm, right? You could die at any time.
That's correct. I suffered multiple strokes in 2014, and after months of being in the hospital, I went to Washington, D.C. and met with the judge there to explain what was going on.
That was Judge Royce Lamberth, who put us in touch with the FBI.
I provided him information of massive domestic surveillance, specifically of Article 3 judges, which seemed to be a primary target of these domestic surveillance because they were looking for information on judges to be able to use it against them as leverage.
Judge Lamberth is a great patriot as well.
Absolutely.
And we thank him, and he was instrumental in having me make the contacts to get you immunity. That interview that you gave was videotaped, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a videotaped deposition, and I laid out these private domestic surveillance programs that were being run. I specifically named names, James Clapper and John Brennan. When James Clapper and John Brennan said in 2013, we're absolutely not doing any domestic surveillance, it was outright lies. They know I had the data that we had collected, so they know that they had to destroy my reputation because if the data gets out, it's pretty hard to argue the data. 600 million pages is a lot of data.
That interview took place about 2 years ago. You remember?
Yeah, it took place in December 2015.
And I've asked the FBI to preserve that information. Now, I myself am skeptical about the FBI because they do similar surveillance, don't they? I mean, they send drones over neighborhoods. They grab everybody's phone call, even if they're just looking for one person. And is it possible that maybe they're covering this up because they may be culpable as well?
I think that they've been involved in as much as the CIA and everybody. In fact, on the data that I provided them, it shows that the FBI servers were breached by the CIA at least 7 times over 6 years. Why would the CIA be breaching the FBI computers? I'll tell you why. Because they were interested in finding out if there were ongoing criminal investigations going on into their own actions.
You've heard the allegations of President Trump that he's wiretapped. Is that credible? Is that plausible?
Absolutely. In fact, I provided to the FBI 17 businesses of Donald Trump, including the Trump Tower, the Trump leasing programs, all of these different programs, and including Trump himself and the various family members that had been wiretapped under these programs. I started by going to Maricopa County and showing that Sheriff Arpaio himself was wiretapped under the Obama administration.
Well, this is important, Dennis, and the FBI is sitting on it. I'm doing my role in having the government do its job, having others press on the FBI to do its job. But we know that Director Comey is playing both sides of the street, and frankly, most people don't believe he's telling the truth. And it's very unfortunate because he had a good reputation before, but he's apparently ruining it these days. And frankly, no one on the intelligence committees can be trusted. Do you think they can be? I don't think they can.
No, in fact, Representative Nunes came out recently saying that there was no credible evidence that Trump Tower had been wiretapped. I find that amazing, considering I have both contacted Representative Nunes and said I would be more than willing to supply you information proving that they had, and that there's so much mass surveillance data that has been taking place. I mean, there's been a wiretap on Trump for years. The
problem here is that people like you are not listened to, and we're making sure that you will be listened to. We have to open this nut. We have to crack the nut because, in my view, and you can give me your views, I think the future of this nation hangs in the balance when, as Judge Leon ruled in our case against the NSA, where we preliminarily enjoined it 2 times, that this is an Orwellian state that we live in, Big Brother, where these agencies have the ability to coerce and blackmail, where there are power even higher than the President of the United States. This president is barricaded in the White House right now, in effect. Everything is against him. They're trying to destroy him. And it's only someone like you, Dennis, telling the truth under the appropriate circumstances and having the FBI and others do their job by looking at the information you provided that we ever have any chance of survival. That's my view. So thank you, Dennis, for your service. You are a patriot, and the American people have to recognize that, and they will.
Stroke or no stroke, I am going to expose the CIA and NSA misdeeds until the American people know the truth.
Thank you, Dennis, for your time. God bless you. This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman. We'll be right back.
The left-wing media is an existential threat to America. Whether it's the fake news network that says, this is CNN, or the left's corrupt establishment networks like ABC, NBC, and CBS, the left-leaning media has become increasingly more dishonest. This corruption of the mainstream media reached a fever pitch during last year's election and has continued this year with their coverage of the new administration. At Freedom Watch, we started the Leftist Media Strike Force to combat the left's hold on the media. We monitor, report, and take action against the inaccuracies, slander, and threats that the media generates against conservatives and conservative policies. Go to leftistmediastrikeforce.org to join the fight and donate to help us battle the fake news media. The modern mainstream media has become nothing more than a protection racket for the establishment politicians and corporations that are running our country into the ground. And we need your help. That's leftistmediastrikeforce.org.
Fearless.
He's claiming he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
I want to tell you now about a scandal which is brewing on the horizon. It was the biggest tragedy in the war in Afghanistan. 30 servicemen, 22 special ops, including SEAL Team 6, were shot down 3 months after the death of Osama bin Laden in the Tangi Valley. They were sent out precipitously by our military on a Chinook helicopter. It goes back to the 1960s, extremely slow. 22 special ops and 30, as I said, were loaded up onto that copter. Very unusual. It went into battle. There was no eyes in the sky, according to the military initially. It went in under rules of engagement under the Obama administration. It did not allow our servicemen to fire first. They had to be shot at before they could even return fire. The helicopter was shot down having hovered 13 minutes over the ultimate crash site for unexplained reasons by the Taliban. It was hit by an RPG, which is a shoulder-carried missile. It was what the military called a lucky shot. And after that happened, the families came forward. We represent 2 of them. the Strange family, and the Hamburger family, also the Dugandara family, actually 3. And they asked for answers to this, but they were never forthcoming during the Obama administration. And for that reason, we started an investigation by Chairman Jason Chaffetz of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. He held a hearing, but that was a cover-up because we never got answers as to the reasons for this crash. And here's what's really mysterious about it. The Obama Defense Department claimed that the black box that would ordinarily be available to find out why that crash occurred went missing because of a flash flood in Afghanistan. I've quipped sarcastically, there hasn't been a flood there since Noah's Ark. They also claimed that they couldn't explain why 7 Afghan commandos on that mission were substituted out at the last minute and 7 inserted, and no one knows who they are. And there's a lot of other anomalies here and strange things that happened. At the ramp ceremony sending the bodies back, a prayer was given by a Muslim cleric, and when our clients had it translated, it was damning these brave heroes, their sons, to hell as infidels. In addition to that, bodies were cremated when the families hadn't even been given permission. Was this to cover everything up? But just in the last few weeks, years after this crash occurred, which was on August 6, 2011, 3 months again after bin Laden died, a brave serviceman came forward, a woman by the name of Jody Marquez. She was a targeter, a co-pilot in the Eyes in the Sky, which the Obama Defense Department said never existed. In fact, it did. It was another Obama lie. And she observed that there was an opportunity to call this mission off because she saw Taliban grouping ready to attack this helicopter. And in fact, the mission had already been accomplished by U.S. Rangers that were on the ground. There was no reason to leave this Chinook helicopter hovering over the crash site for 13 minutes, but yet that's what happened. And our brave servicemen are now dead with no answers. This is something that you need to take a look at. You can find it on our website visually at freedomwatchusa.org. We have a video that was produced by Circa News, which explains exactly what happened in the words of Jody Marquez. But what's really also interesting is that Chairman Jason Chaffetz of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee that conducted the sham investigation has recently advised that he's no longer going to run for Congress anymore. He's from Utah. He's a Republican. And that's a very wise decision on his part because he's got some answers to give why this thing was covered up on behalf of the Obama administration. And who was running the Obama Defense Department at the time? It was someone by the name of Leon Panetta, who had been Clinton's White House chief of staff, a political hack, a congressman from California, who we caught in the 1990s while I was running Judicial Watch, obstructing justice in the Chinagate scandal. And Leon Panetta is behind this as well. It's going to be a major scandal. Heads are going to roll. People are probably going to wind up going to jail for obstructing justice. So I wanted to bring this to your attention today and go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause, because we need to take the lid off of this can. We cannot have our servicemen besmirched and treated in this fashion. And we need to change our rules of engagement so our servicemen can fire on enemy as we're headed into new battles in the Middle East and elsewhere and not wait to be shot at.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Investigating and exposing corrupt organizations, institutions, judges, and politicians. Special Prosecutor serves as the voice of citizens across the country. Citizens that want the stories of corruption brought to light and those held responsible brought to justice. Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Lord Acton was right. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as Ronald Reagan said, government isn't the solution to our problems, government is the problem. Whether it's the power of our corrupt elected officials, corrupt unelected bureaucrats, or corrupt local, state, and federal judges, Freedom Watch stands for you. We fight the battles for you. We are your Justice Department. We are small, but like a mouse that roars, we are fierce. We won some of the biggest cases against government overreach and corruption, like the 2013 case against the CIA NSA data collection of every American. We have lawsuits against Berkeley, the Federal Bureau of Land Management, and Black Lives Matter. We need your help in our fight for your freedom. Join the battle and donate to Freedom Watch right now. Call 1-844-FW-ETHIC or go to www.freedomwatchusa.org and donate generously to our cause.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Coming to you sponsored on the NSA hotline, because they're obviously listening to this. Guys, how are you doing out there? I hope you enjoy our show. Is David Marconi. He's a very famous Hollywood writer. He's someone who wrote a visionary film called Enemy of the State with Gene Hackman. He's also written a recent film called The Foreigner with Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan. That'll come out in the fall. I want to introduce you to my good friend, David Marconi. Welcome to Special Prosecutor.
Thank you, Larry.
Tell us what caused you to write that movie. It certainly was one of the great movies I've seen in many years, and obviously it's dear to my heart with regard to what we've been doing here at Freedom Watch and uncovering what's going on at the intelligence agencies. But what caused you to be able to see the future?
You know, I believe in conspiracies, ever since 5th grade. I mean, I've something that's close and dear to my heart. I mean, when you write movies, you got to kind of find things that, audiences will gravitate to and have fun with. And I went to film school, and I went to and I directed a movie called The Harvest, and then that brought me a relationship with Simpson and Bruckheimer. And they're known for their action pictures, and they responded to my movie, and they called me in and they said, "We want to do a movie about a guy that's electronically taken apart. Would you be interested in doing that? If so, come up with a story idea for us." And as the gentleman who was telling me that, their lead developing man at the time was a man named Lucas Foster. I looked behind his desk, and he had a 10 by 15-foot poster of North by Northwest with Cary Grant on the run. And I said, "So you want to do a movie about a guy that's taken apart electronically?" So I started researching that, and I came across a group called the National Security Agency. And here's a group that, as I researched, had more money and manpower than the FBI and CIA put together, yet nobody knew at the time who they were. And I go, well, how can this be? This seems like a pretty good boogeyman agency. So I started researching it. I read a book by James Bamford called The Puzzle Palace, which at the time was already 8 years old. And his book was already based on research that was probably another 8 years old. And you read about the capabilities of this agency and how, they get into the emails and everything else. And this was going on for years. And I realized that anybody who was anybody, especially in politics or the intelligence agencies, had to have known this stuff was happening. And then you had the church committee tried to open up, the door on this a long time ago. But the average American, they're unaware because these were not issues that were brought to the forefront by mainstream media. It didn't really have much to do with the average American's view on life at that particular time. It's still hard getting people to, get excited about this stuff because, George Orwell predicted 1984 and all this, but what he didn't predict was that these surveillance devices would be handed to us in the form of toys and televisions and things that we embrace that become so much part of our lives that we don't notice them anymore. And we don't realize that all of these things are basically infectable from anybody from the big security agencies. And it's not just, it's not Russia, it's America, it's the Israelis. Everybody's doing it. And for us to sit there and point our fingers at some boogeyman like Russia, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense because, again, the National Security Agency is bigger than anything the Russians have, and we spy on everybody, including the Americans. So it was a pretty big eye opener. I mean, I was reading reports about how the Cold War, right after the war, we were basically scanning every letter coming out of East Germany for microdots. I mean, they must have had warehouses filled with people to look for microdots on letters that were traveling between the two countries. So, and this was happening in 1946. So I saw, all right, well, this is a great conspiracy. And then I married it to the poster, North by Northwest. I substituted, my character, who was played by Will Smith, who did a really good job. I was really happy with him, and I watched the conversation. And because Bruckheimer had a relationship with Gene Hackman, he was able to bring back, the character of Harry Call, and we were able to use him in this new character I created, which was called Brill, who was kind of based on the Harry Call character. So it was a lovely process, and I was very happy with the way the film turned out. Originally, I was attached to direct it, but I wrote a budget that was so high I couldn't, that didn't happen anymore. But I got the script to Oliver Stone, who wanted to direct it, and called up the head of Disney and Bruckheimer directly, and they tried to negotiate a deal with Oliver, but ultimately, Jerry Bruckheimer decided to go with Tony Scott, who he had a relationship with, who turned it much more into a fun kind of Hollywood type of action picture. I think had Oliver had the chance to direct it at the time, it probably would have had a little more gravitas and weight, but it probably wouldn't have been the fun action picture that it turned out to be. Tony, I was very happy with the job that Tony did, and it was all in all, it was a project I was very happy with at the end of the day.
Well, it's a great movie. I've seen it myself several times. Tell the audience a little bit about what the theme of the movie is, other than just the NSA. What's the plot?
The themes are the stories of how we are all, the more we embrace this technology, the more we're subject to surveillance, whether it's by an angry boyfriend or an angry, a jealous girlfriend, or, somebody who wants to get an up and up on your business deals. It can be anybody. But it's become ubiquitous now in the sense that, it's everywhere. I mean, it used to be, spies and whispers, and then it became cameras, and now because of the technology, what is the concept of privacy anymore? I mean, Clapper said you have no expectations of privacy anymore. Well, these are pretty heavy statements to say to the American public who thought that they did have privacy.
Well, and of course, we know that you wrote this before Edward Snowden even came forward, years later. Am I right that the situation today is even worse than you were able to see at that time?
The situation hasn't really changed. It's just become more magnified. So it's not just the NSA. It's not just the CIA or the FSB or the Mossad or whatever group you want to point to. All the intelligence agencies in the world are doing it. People now in social media and social networks, they know everything about you. There is, to think that, Facebook or Instagram or any of this stuff is private is nonsense, because the tools that the intelligence business has to pry open these things and get their hands on it and store it are incredible. Is the government ever going to use this stuff? Who knows? But we have created a Stasi-like system where, should the dictator or an Adolf Hitler or whoever one day decide to, take over, the tools that they have to root out the dissidents are amazing. I mean, they can see who your friends are, they can see the calls you make, and they can put together your entire friendship network, overnight. So how could you stand up against a dictator or somebody that wants to, lock us up in pens?
Do you think it's plausible that people in and around Trump's campaign and the Trump White House now have been surveyed by the intelligence agencies?
Absolutely. I firmly believe that they surveil everybody. They're recording everything. What they do with that information, in some cases, this information can be used to blackmail people, whether it's a judge, whether it's a federal judge, whether it's Flynn. I mean, who knows? But what happens in the privacy of conversations and that kind of stuff, we'll never know about. But this is stuff. This is kingmaker stuff, and this is the kind of stuff where things can be subtly shaded, whether it's from an international business deal or a political appointment or somebody who wants to go against, a particular bill, enemy of the state. I mean, you have a guy that's a senator that's killed right in the beginning because he's not going to vote for a particular surveillance bill. So, I mean, these issues, are as old as history itself. I mean, I'm sure the Romans were very good at, backdoor intrigues and everything, but they didn't have the surveillance that, we have now. So it just makes their job easier. You can have a kid sitting down on the computer at Fort Meade, and with a couple keystrokes, he can have, anything about anybody. So we've really entered into a brave new world. And the genie is out of the bottle. I don't know how the genie is going to get back in the bottle, but the bottle is continuing to expand and expand and expand. So all we can do as individuals is realize that and try to protect our privacy however possible. But is it realistic to say I'm not going to use computers anymore, or I'm not going to watch television anymore? No, it's not. But we can certainly take, little steps to protect ourselves however we can.
To make it more difficult. And, you were out there before anybody else. Like I said, my hat's off to you, David. We've become good friends. We think alike in many ways. And the thing that really is somewhat troubling is that you were out there and you were educating the American people. Nobody was picking up on this, other than you, until Snowden came along. And then, of course, other whistleblowers came along.
Yeah, I wrote about this stuff, and they said, "You mean the government's reading emails?" And they looked at me like I, just came off of a UFO landing ship after, smoking, 5 bags of pot. I mean, they looked at me like I was a complete nut job. But I had done the research. I had read the books, and again, the research and the work was out there. It was available. Anybody could have read what I was. I'm not reading secret sources. I'm reading, again, the book was called The Puzzle Palace by James Bamford. I think it was written in 1983. So it was out there. It was a thick read, but people, who were interested in that kind of stuff was there. But most people, they don't have the time to research the stuff the way I did. And I found that by talking to people, they were getting very upset with me, and they started to look at me like I was, a nut job. And, when the movie first came out, a lot of the reviews were, well, it's a good Hollywood yarn and a good kind of, action picture, but completely implausible. And I'm just scratching my head going, all right, whatever. And Snowden, God bless him, really brought a light to this. I mean, the NSA, I believe 99% of the people at the NSA believe in their job, and they believe in the mission, and that's to protect the country. I've met some of these people. They're wonderful, but they also have a fairly myopic view on the matters, and what they don't see the bigger picture. And they're not paid to see the bigger picture. They're basically looking at the issues through a tube, and they're saying, this is what we want you to do, and you focus on this. And so they're not looking at the overall picture, and they're given a job to, monitor, transatlantic cable or pull stuff out of the air we're looking for a particular type of phone call. And they're not seeing the bigger picture, which I was trying to see and trying to put together and to fathom.
Right. Well, they're I don't mean this in a negative way, but they're little people, and their superiors are politicians, some of them hacks. And the information that they're collecting, thinking they're doing a service to the country, can be misused. And it would now appear, at least to me, that a lot of it has been misused. That it would happen to President Trump or people around him, like General Michael Flynn and others, is no longer fiction, but you saw it in advance. So I want to thank you, David, for being a visionary. And I urge everyone to go out and rent or buy David's film, Enemy of the State. It's great. You need to see it. It's looking at history. You probably get it on Netflix as well. Perhaps there'll be a sequel. Hopefully not a real-life sequel.
Well, I understand they are going to turn it into a TV series now, so there you go.
Well, there we go. And thank you, David. You're great. I appreciate your coming.
It was a pleasure, Larry, and please keep up the great work. It's great to have a voice as you're out there, standing up for us.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
The left-wing media is an existential threat to America. Whether it's the fake news network that says, this is CNN, or the left's corrupt establishment networks like ABC, NBC, and CBS, the left-leaning media has become increasingly more dishonest. This corruption of the mainstream media reached a fever pitch during last year's election and has continued this year with their coverage of the new administration. At Freedom Watch, we started the leftist media strike force to combat the left's hold on the media. We monitor, report, and take action against the inaccuracies, slander, and threats that the media generates against conservatives and conservative policies. Go to leftistmediastrikeforce.org to join the fight and donate to help us battle the fake news media. The modern mainstream media has become nothing more than a protection racket for the establishment politicians and corporations that are running our country into the ground. And we need your help. That's leftistmediastrikeforce.org.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
Thanks for joining us. I now want to talk about the state of our judiciary. That's, of course, why I started Judicial Watch back in 1994. I had had certain experiences with judges that weren't exactly favorable. I saw a lot of prejudice on the bench. I saw they were wearing their politics on their sleeve. They were, in effect, politicians in robes. And that's why I decided to become the freedom fighter, as I call myself, that I am today. But the situation has grown much worse over the last many years. The judges on the bench today were primarily appointed by President Bill Clinton and President Barack Obama. About 70 to 80% of the judges are leftists. Many of them are leftist hacks. They don't care about the law. They're following their own personal political predilections, scratching the backs of the people that put them in power. We've seen that recently with regard to President Trump's moratorium on immigration from now 6 predominantly Muslim countries. Decisions being made not on the basis of the law and his executive power, but to simply to throw a monkey wrench into what he's doing to try to delegitimize the Trump presidency. Now, I'm not here to support President Trump. I'm here to support the Constitution of the United States. And the judges that need to be on that bench need to respect that Constitution. Now, currently, the way we select judges, and it needs to be changed, and I've studied this, and I have a proposal, is political patronage. Senators in each state get to choose or nominate the judge. The president then puts that nomination forward, and it goes to the Senate for confirmation. It's frequently not done on the basis of merit. It's based on politics. Like I said, political patronage. And I think that before judges are even eligible to be elevated to a higher level, assuming you're elevating a judge, sometimes lawyers are made judges or people in other walks of life, that they should have to go to judge school to learn how to administer to a case, to create not just justice, but the appearance of justice. And we don't see that on the bench frequently. They should be psychologically tested. Many of our judges are, frankly, unstable individuals. Maybe they had a fight with their boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, or wife and like to pontificate from the bench. That's what I experienced back in the early 90s with a judge called William D. Keller in the Central District of California. He came in drunk, and he came in pontificating with a lot of bigoted remarks, and that's what caused me to start Judicial Watch. That was the final straw when I confronted him. We also need judges that have term limits. It's too much. The Founding Fathers were enlightened by God, but they weren't God, and it's too much to have them there for life because they feel that they're not accountable to the American people. So I've proposed that they have 2 terms of 4 years, renewable for good behavior, and that they go back to wherever they came from, so ultimately they will be accountable to the American people. And when judges make bad decisions, frequently parties in court don't have the resources to appeal. So if you fall below a certain income level, you should be able to arbitrate a bad decision by a judge that's grossly negligent, reckless, or intentionally wrong. And judges should have insurance to pay the damages caused by their actions. These are the kinds of things that I'm recommending that need to be studied. But there's another thing out there, and that is that if the Republicans did one thing right in the last few years, it's to hold back the nominees of President Obama. There's 100 vacancies on the court, and we now have the opportunity to get really good independent judges that follow the Constitution, that don't wear politics on their sleeve, on the bench. And Freedom Watch, which you can find at freedomwatchusa.org, has instituted a judicial strike force coalition where we're going to be vetting judges, interviewing judges, potential judges, recommending them to the bench. It shouldn't be a question of whether you're conservative, liberal, or moderate, but we want judges that will obey the law, that will follow the law. And we want you to join us. We need your strong support, not just your prayers. We need your strong financial support because this is a big endeavor. So please go to our website, contribute as much as you can, and we use your prayers as well, to our Judicial Selection Strike Force Coalition. We, the American people, need to come together. Judges are our most important public servants. They protect us from the tyranny of the other two branches of government, in addition to ourselves. Without good judges, we will not have a functioning republic. And therefore, please, go to our website, freedomwatchusa.org, sign up for the Judicial Selection Strike Force Coalition, and contribute to our cause. In this way, we'll preserve our great democracy. Thank you.